as Climate Action for putting together some phenomenal speakers on a topic that's obviously resonating with a lot of people today. As Renato mentioned, my name is Leslie, and I'll do a little bit of background as we get our speakers up here. Bruce, Tommy, and Matt, if you'll come up while I'll do some introductions. My name's Leslie. I've been at Green School almost 9 years now. I'm the founder of the Eco Marketing Project and have been doing Asia Pacific marketing and sustainability marketing for international corporates. My job today is not to talk about the financing solutions, but to represent all of you to get the most that we can from our speakers today. So let me just do a little bit of review to get us all back in the mindset of what was presented already today. And let me just start with Bruce, thank you. Remember how we started out today, highlighting New York Climate Week on the focus areas, the myriad of participants, and also the reality check of the challenges ranging from carbon offsets that can cause disruption, the types of standards agencies out there, and taking these forwards to investing wisely to solve the challenges of our planet. Then Tommy's presentation, which highlighted some examples of what works and doesn't in investment options, as well as important insights of what investment firms are looking for before confirming funding and how to compete in that space. And except for the folks that were distracted by the kitten in the back, everyone probably remembers our last presentation just happened with Matt sharing the underfunding, the breadth of nature-based solutions that are underfunded, what is working, and what challenges need to be tackled, including the focus areas and realities connecting investors with impact investing. So the objective of the panel is to further pull the expertise from these guys, and I'll let you know a couple of my objectives here. We want to highlight the breadth and depth of the climate capital stack, the challenges and funding solutions across a range of sectors, the metrics adopted by impact investors beyond the typical VC model, and any potential startup founders to understand the different sources of investment. So we understand there might be some potential startup founders in our audience, and so what we want to do is make sure that we capture what funding options are best matched for startup founders in our audience, and what investable opportunities should people be looking for in businesses. So to get started, before we get into questions from the audience, we have a slide up here highlighting some of the problems that need solving. So let's talk about how they can attract investment. So I'll ask each one of our panelists to maybe pick a solution or two and to share how founders that are attacking the problems here should be thinking about building investable businesses, the investment portion of businesses. Bruce, would you like to start?
Sure. So I get to pick one?
Thank you. Yes, you get to pick.
It's like a game show. So I picked the category circular economy. I'll pick that one because it's something which I've worked a bit in with a company called OLX, who you possibly know from Indonesia. It's about sort of a type of eBay. It was created by some of the founders of eBay, actually. And it's about selling on, passing on products that you've already bought, giving them a second, third, and a fourth life. And so I think circular economy is a very important part of this, not just to keep buying new. And you see changes in this area. For example, you may be familiar with a company called ASOS, who do fast fashion. And fast fashion, for example, it can be very wasteful. Almost 70% of fast fashion ends up in landfill within about a year. But you also see their customers are changing, and services like Vinted for pre-owned clothing is coming up and nipping at their heels. And so many of these companies are thinking, well, what's the circular economy element of our business? Can we offer our customers a way to, when they're tired of what they have, to sell it on? Or a company like Decathlon who does sports goods. Similarly, they're trying to think of how could we offer a solution where this could be sold onto maybe other customers. So I think trying to make it not all about, buy it, throw it away, buy it, throw it away, buy it, throw it away, is a very important part of this. And again, back to the fashion industry, I mean, you just have to look at the problems that area has, that they have to somehow transform their industry, all the way from working wages. This fashion machine was created all around the world, sometimes not in very good condition. I say you just have to look at the rivers of Bangladesh to see what colour is coming next year in terms of fashion. So I think that, but if you are looking at investing in something which is related to circular economy, and I think this would be true for any of these categories, is have they kind of validated their ideas with actually potential customers. So have they really tested the ideas? Anything might sound like a good idea, and often people who go into startups think they have a great idea, but as they actually start talking to potential customers, it adjusts slightly, potentially their target customer adjusts slightly. But they have to go through that kind of questioning themselves phase. So just be careful that people are absolutely sure that this is the thing. They have to challenge themselves to validate that to some degree.
Thanks, Bruce. Tommy, would you like to pick one of the problems that we have listed here and discuss how business owners that are trying to solve some of these issues should be looking at investment?
Yeah, just want to add to your point that in Europe it's interesting that we now introduce the right to repair, so that producers really have to take back the product and repair it. And will be able to deny that service. So that are steps in the right direction. So I'll take the transport mobility, if I may. So we invest quite a bit in mobility solutions, but as I said, normally in software. So we invested, for example, in a platform which matches cargo freight, so that these trucks don't drive empty back when they deliver their goods. We've invested some in the EV space. It's really booming in Europe. Lots of chargers are being deployed all the time. And as I said, in logistics, we're also looking to invest. But at the same time, I think what we're now noticing is that in mobility, especially hardware, like new car companies, new scooter companies, whatever, they're effectively all going bankrupt. So we basically daily have a bankruptcy now. All these scale-ups, also in the US, are now going under. Also these competitors in the US, these other EV makers are really struggling. So it's actually another really interesting space to, if you're thinking about starting a company there, because basically, because of all these bankruptcies, there will be no capital left to start something new, because there will be some hurt for years until people will deploy capital there again. So if you will start something mobility, it probably needs to be software, and it probably also needs to solve a real pain point, which you can prove. It needs to add value for a customer, or either save them a lot of costs. But that basically applies to every startup now, especially if you're trying to sell B2B. I think globally, the global trend is that B2B selling has become pretty hard. Sales cycles are probably up to a year or even longer. And most companies are actually looking to cut on their B2B expenses, to cut the stack. So selling new products is super hard at the moment. Not to discourage you, but yeah. As I said, your value proposition has to be more clear than ever, I would say.
Do you have any examples that you remember that companies you did not invest in because they were missing some of these components?
Oh yeah, we invest in, we deny 99% of the companies we apply.
What's the most common mistake?
Well, we are venture capital, so we're also looking at a very large market opportunity, like down the road. And I think most of the impact, talk to somebody in the audience, most of the impact companies who apply have a great mission, really passionate founders, but they want to build a company locally, or not a company that will scale to 100 million revenue at certain growth margins. So I do support these companies, but normally they're not venture capital backable. So that's a bit of a pickle most of the time. So I actually would advise most founders to never pick venture capital, because in one way you basically, signing a death warrant on the spot, because you have to work your ass off for many years, have to exit it really quickly, and if the growth falls behind, you're probably going to lose the company, because all that capital comes with what they call preferent agreements. So what means is that if you raise 100 million in a round, the investor has the right to first get this 100 million normally. So even if you sell it for 100 million, after 10 years you effectively get nothing. So that's why they say the last 10 years venture capital was an interesting option. But if I was a founder now, I probably wouldn't do it. I would look at other options like subsidies, grants. Don't aim for the moon, don't aim for a unicorn. Just build your company at your own pace. Just cut out the venture capital part and try go back to the old ways, like have customers prepay for your service or product. I think lots of startups just forgot about that option, but go look at other creative ways of financing your business through the first years. But I think that's the most logical way to go right now.
Thanks, really good insights and
So I'm
reality.
negotiating against myself.
You got 2 negatives against unicorns today. Talk about that earlier. Matt, do you want to choose one of the issues here that we might have some founders thinking about how to get investment solutions and some advice to them?
It's a bit harder for that. I guess maybe, just because I should probably put sustainable agriculture, because it's, food systems are the start and the end of where we engage with nature, and it's a huge market opportunity. It's not a market opportunity which typically attracts, the types of venture capital money, because you can't 100x it. But it's enormous, as we buy food every day, and therefore it's a good business. What's the question? What am I meant to
If I have a company trying to solve the solution of sustainable agriculture, how should I be looking at pitching to investors to be successful?
I mean, the good thing about the agricultural space is that if you look at small farmers across Southeast Asia, many of them face the same problems, versions of the same problems. Cultures are different, landscapes are different, inputs and challenges are different, but broadly, problems are similar. So if you can come up with a solution in that space, then you have a very, very large potential market for engagement. Many, many millions of smallholder farmers you can engage with, which is why things like Grameen Bank, the smallholder loan facility that started in India became so huge, because there was no limit to their capacity to scale. So I'd be interested in looking at it if I was a founder, which I guess I am, but if I was a different kind of founder, I'd be looking at, the types of things, the types of problems which are shared by many, many farmers, or many, many fishers, and tackling some of those, breaking that down into some manageable pieces. So, for example, a problem that's faced by smallholder fishermen might be, being able to afford to buy fuel to put in your engine to get out fishing, or it may be that you actually don't know where to fish because you haven't got data on, where fish are spawning at that particular time of year. So there's 2 things right there. There's a data solution which might help fishermen understand where to go, and there's a way of potentially addressing the fact that fuel is expensive in rural parts of Indonesia. How do you address those 2 problems? But each of those could be a business which would have a very, very large footprint, and could be scalable to many different places. I don't know if that's a very good answer, but I think there's a lot you can kind of unpick with sustainable agriculture around kind of where to look.
Touch on the energy piece as well. I think this is a huge piece of the puzzle. One of the things I mentioned before was solar panels and how absolutely the cheapest way to generate electricity. There's somewhere like Indonesia, it's a problem if you're not actually manufacturing those here. They become very expensive to bring in. It's almost like a luxury good. So somebody at some point has to solve this problem of how do we manufacture solar panels that are as effective and affordable as they are in other places in the world. And will that still be affordable enough for the ordinary person? And then even just keep looking at ordinary Indonesians. How is their energy use today? A huge amount of use of gas. And why? Because it's relatively inexpensive. Why? Because it's subsidized. If things were truly priced at a fair value, the solution for them could be, oh, I want solar panels because I'll be environmentally friendly. It could just be cheaper. So if we can find a way to just make things better and cheaper, that also happen to be solving the environmental problem, that's probably the long-term solution. But we have to overcome this policy, some of these shorter-term problems. And then briefly, the other thing for electric vehicles is, this is a massive market for two-wheelers. It's one of the biggest two-wheel economies in the world. And the electric vehicles are out there. There are two-wheeler electric vehicles, but they're expensive, and they're perhaps not a little bit fragile. But Indonesia is one of the world capitals of battery resources. And there's work going on now to try and say that we should be a leader in terms of creating batteries in the country for vehicles such as this. But the final problem has to be, how do those two-wheel, let's say, electric vehicles become affordable? Are they cheap enough? What's the total cost of ownership? It should be less than internal combustion engine two-wheel vehicle. How do we get there? A lot of work going on there. There are some startups in Indonesia working on this right now. And then also, what's the infrastructure? We need the infrastructure of being able to go and just swap over batteries and almost pull into the gas station instead of getting gas, you just swap over batteries. And there's potential there. But
That's Neo does it, in China.
Yeah, exactly. So there are things happening already in Indonesia, but I think I need to remember the name of the company, but there are a few companies that are probably looking for investment that are trying to solve this on a local basis for ordinary people.
Yeah, but in China, that's heavily subsidized by the government. Like the swapping of batteries, it's super expensive operation. So I wouldn't expect the Indonesian government to allocate such an amount of capital to get an operation like that on the ground.
I just wanted to pick up on your first point there, which I think is sometimes a lot of the most exciting environmentally friendly, nature positive solutions don't necessarily look that way at first glance. I think some of the things that we're finding is terrifying. You have businesses out there which look green. You look at them and you think, oh, that's super positive. You're doing great things and you're protecting stuff, and it's really exciting. But there's a lot of really interesting businesses which are just getting on with the daily business of providing what everyday Indonesians need, which with some tweaks could actually have major impacts on emissions reductions, have major impacts on, say for example, if I was going to provide a loan to a small farmer in rural Indonesia, if I provided that loan at a rate which is equivalent to any other loan that they could get, because I'm able to do that because I'm somewhat subsidized by grants, or I've found some new way to do that. But if I can say to that small farmer, hey, I'll give you this loan, but using this remote sensing technology, I'm just going to keep an eye on what you do on the land. And if you can actually look after your land and restore the forest that's on your land by 10% over the next 5 years, I'm going to make your loan cheaper. Right? And I can do all that with existing technologies, with existing tools, with apps. And I think that is super exciting because on the face of it, I'm just funding a farmer to plant more cocoa. But with some tweaks and with some smart thinking, we can actually turn, which says some of these very kind of daily need solutions and things that can have really big impact.
Thanks to each of you. And I think a lot of the advice and insights that you provided for the topics that you presented are actually applicable across many of the topics listed. Are there any other comments you want to make to those? Otherwise, I have a follow-up question. And maybe I'll start with Tommy. What are some of the most pressing impact problems? It might be here on the chart or might be other that are not investable, that don't feel like good investments right now. Are there any?
I think basically.
Stay away from?
Yeah, I think food is probably dead global market. Food investors are basically just that was very hot. You remember the whole plant-based hamburgers, the Oatleys of this world, all the alternatives. That whole game basically commoditized the last few years. So in the Netherlands, if you're in a supermarket now, you will have 20 offerings of alternatives. So that's just a commodity now. And also, generally, products and food especially are just marketing games. So you burn lots of cash basically to acquire customers. And the what we now noticed, I think, in most parts of the world, is that the loyalty for a brand actually is not that sticky. So people switch anyway. It's very different than a software product where you have, you train your whole organization to use something. You have recurring revenue. It's a super pain to switch to a different provider. So that's why I think 90% of the funds focus on B2B SaaS and B2B offerings, because consumer business is quite hard to start with, and in a high interest environment it's actually not attractive at all, because cash is so expensive and you need to burn lots of cash to sell a new product. So there are creative ways to do it, like through influencers. That's what most people try. That's why you see so many celebrities trying our product, because they are basically the only ones who have the advantage of having free millions of followers to push a product. But other than that, I think that there's no market there anymore.
Just can I just clarify, when you say food, you mean more the consumer facing end, or you mean the production end as well?
More the consumer facing end, I would say. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on areas that are a bit difficult to invest in right now, kind of no-go zones?
Outer, and then mobility.
Okay, the next question I have, Bruce, is...
Yeah, no, I would say that basically all things which will need a lot of capital in the next few years are almost uninvestable unless there are very specific use cases which are heavily subsidized, for example, under the Energy Act in the US or something like that. But capital intensive projects will probably not get off the ground unless not by private investors, unless interest rates come down, but that will take some time.
Thanks. The next question I have, Matt, actually is going to be for you. Advice for climate founders and startups. How to build an investable business.
Okay.
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, great. Well, on the basis of what Tommy says, but, okay. How to build an investable business. I mean, I think you need to think creatively about how you're going to access capital. So, like you say, it might be that VCs aren't the place you should be even looking. Maybe you need to think about creatively accessing grants to help you get costs covered early. I think there's a lot of grants out there, and particularly grants that are quasi-investments, if you like. So, there's grant makers out there who are like, look, I'll give you this money, and I don't want anything but a 1% or 2% payback. And I'm happy to have that in 10 years. Which is great for a grant maker, because otherwise they would have lost it, and you're actually getting it back and you can recycle it. So I think thinking creatively about how you access capital to start, I think is really important. Because that allows you to think about building a business model well, so that you can then, build a customer base, build a track record, and then, become slightly larger. I guess in terms of what you focus on, again, I think to me it goes back to this thing about like, what is everybody doing every day that we can make better? And I think you made this great point. It's like, you just want to invest in the thing that's kind of like an Obama-esque point, right? Like, just do the same thing, but do it 10% better. Like, that's great. Like, keep doing that, because if everyone does 10% better every 5 years, very quickly we have a completely different economy. So if you can come up with a way of growing, having a fish farm 10% better than the last guy that's having less impact, great, do that. If you can come up with a way of producing 10% more crops, or somehow getting a return back to your farmers that encourages their loyalty and loyalty to your business. I think those are the sort of things that I think are really exciting, but they're not often the sexiest things. They're not the 400,000 hectare carbon projects, or the, we're going to disrupt the, I don't know, the way in which we all eat fruit or something, or we're going to grow a hamburger from scratch. Like, I think those are cool, but that's a different set of people that you're looking at for those kind of investments. What are the problems that we face every day? I just met somebody who's like, how do we get Indonesians to make a choice to eat organic fruit and vegetables? Great, like, fantastic. So I think, just being a little bit smart about the way you look at the problem.
Really targeted and maybe more accessible for people that are starting businesses or looking to invest in smaller businesses on pinpointing really what that target is. I like what you said about the collective piece. One of the things that the Eco Marketing Project, we say over and over again is, just get started. Don't let too many worries get in your way, because collectively, if everybody does a little bit every single day, it does make a difference. It's just when we get frozen and are afraid to get started on maybe smaller projects or smaller investors. Any other comments on that?
Just a quick thought. It's also have patience. I mean, some of the best ideas weren't sort of overnight successes. This sometimes can take a while. We don't have a lot of time with the environment, but it still can take some time. I was talking to somebody earlier, and even Gojek. This was an idea by a couple of students about 12 years ago about trying to get employment and trying to keep Gojeks, the two-wheelers on the road, busy with customers. Started as more of a purposeful investment in time, and it's become this huge business. But of course now they have to change, because there are going to be 2 million riders on the road helping Gojek run its businesses across Indonesia and Vietnam and Singapore. And of course that's creating a lot of emissions. But they're investing in companies like Electron for electric bikes. And so even although as a government might not do it, the private sector can. So in the next, they're already doing trials, over the next 12, 13 years, they want their entire fleet, 2-wheel and 4-wheel, to be electric. And that will have an impact. But things like solar panels, again, we said at one point, very expensive, not really viable, but given time, given investment, given innovation, they become incredibly cheap and incredibly viable. So it just can take some time. It's complicated.
Are they going to do it electric in Indonesia also, or in Singapore?
Yes, across the board. I mean, there's already. I mean, it's not just Gojek. It's Gojek and Grab, for example, all have
an alliance or something.
Not necessarily, but probably the companies who are providing, they're sort of independent to some degree, providing better, more rugged bikes and battery technology could supply those companies. But it's definitely the trials already in Bali and Jakarta going on, and I think we've already probably by now started in Vietnam, just to learn and then to then quickly scale that technology. But then, how do you make it affordable for drivers?
Charging or swapping batteries?
Swapping batteries.
Yeah.
Swapping batteries. So the idea would be at every petrol station, this will be the infrastructure. You just go in your bike as a driver. You take 2 hours to 2. It's a very successful model elsewhere in the world, but you need to have that here. But you also have to have it in a way that works with the Indonesian government and infrastructure, and you have to build things here as well. But it's a problem to solve, and I think they're working on this right now. But it's the industry is sort of working on that problem.
As somebody that lived in Sabang before there were many residents here, I would definitely say thank you to those students and everybody involved in Gojek for getting it off the ground. And it leads to me my next question, which brings it a little bit closer to home. Bruce, for you, where do you see the next big impact investment opportunity in this region? We've talked about EVs, good and bad. We've talked a little bit about food. Any other ideas?
Easy question. I mean, I would say I'm still learning. I think I learned a lot today as well, and the importance of biodiversity and the importance of nature. And I think I'm looking at what I will invest in as well. And some of it is not all about a huge amount of return. It's about another thing in the future. So I do think, I worry about farming, where the average age of farmers here is like 57, which is like mine, which is not good. How do we get young people to come into that industry and make farming kind of exciting thing? Where is the biggest investment? Let me think about that.
Okay, any other ideas, thoughts?
I mean, I'd say nature's the biggest investment. was going to be kind of pedantic. Like, I think fundamentally, like that's the biggest market opportunity we've ever had, right? If you want to use those terms, the question is how you actually operationalize that. And I think there's different. Everyone's coming at different angles, but yeah, like we have to find an answer to getting finance into that space. It may not be the VC kind of model. It may not be what we currently even know about, the kind of economic capital stack. We may have to design something completely new to make this make sense. Because not making sense, it not getting finance isn't really an option that we want to consider. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a glib answer, but I think we've got to figure that out, which is kind of exciting, right? And I think again going back to Bruce's point about Gojek, it's a classic example of like daily need identified problem identified early on. It's become something which is far in advance of what they probably originally envisaged. The same thing, we can do the same thing for nature. Like, it's not, like I say, there's 7 million smallholder fishers in Indonesia, all face the same problems. 25 million-ish, pick your number, but 25 million-ish smallholder farmers all face the same challenges. There are very, very few businesses, commercial businesses, which are focusing on tackling the problems that they face on a daily basis. Let's do that. There's a lot there. It's just that we're not seeing it yet. Most of us, and it's not surprising. Jakarta has been the focus of most of the attention, which makes a lot of sense. But we talk about market. I think that's where the excitement is.
Maybe if I can have 2 seconds to think about it. If I could really make an impact, I think there's a couple of areas. One is I keep mentioning solar panels. I just think there's something there. It's a problem to solve. And that might be the area I jump into, because it just is frustrating. There has to be a way to overcome the problems, particularly in Indonesia at the moment, to get that to take off. But I would say for anything, you always have to bring it back to how does this support ordinary people? That's your mass market. And you have a lot of the population here are not thriving, they're just surviving. You can tell them go buy organic food. Fairly cool. Fine. So it has to be something that's genuinely better and cheaper for them. And I think the other area, I think Steve, definitely John, I'd love to talk about this. If you catch them for is building material. Concrete is one of the most damaging environmental materials ever invented. And I think there's a lot of innovation happening there. And this could be something that actually helps build affordable housing for Indonesia or in Southeast Asia that is not anywhere near as damaging to the planet. That could be really interesting.
It's an incredible topic, so important, so interesting. I think not just for the parents here, but I'm thinking about our kids in school that are coming up with solutions now that this gets incorporated into the topics as they're looking at entrepreneurship and businesses. Do we have time to take? Yes. Okay, great. Do we have roving mics? So I can.
Sorry, let me bring.
Yeah.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much for your time being here, and it's been really high value. I just would like to introduce very quickly my company. I am the co-founder of Bali, and we are trying to tackle all those problems related to sustainable agriculture and also giving access to the 300 million ongoing Indonesian people, because they don't have any other excuse to buy organic by providing them the same prices as conventional agriculture. So I just would like to give some market value. In 1976, there was 65% of the workforce of Indonesia was composed by farmers. Today is 28%. There is a very dangerous trend, and if it continues, there will no more farmers by 2063. This is tomorrow. And as of Bali, the total addressable market in Bali as of today, 2023, is $380 million. Only the serviceable obtainable market in Bali for organic fruits and veggies, only that is $16 million as of today, this year. And the CRGA until 2027 is 7.5%. So this is a very profitable business. My company has been meeting a lot of investors, ventures, and angel investors. We are on the way to talk to also investors to conclude some big deals and tackle the problems. The most problem that we have been facing with investors is that they don't understand what is the food system, and they don't understand what is the F&B market. They don't have any experience in that. And they're expecting like fast ROIs, they're expecting very huge guarantee. Like as a founder of the company, I can't give because it could bring my company into much jeopardy. So we need as well to make our investors, and it's also an educational part that I didn't plan to do when I founded this company, to make them understand that nature can give you vegetables tomorrow. The crop can't give you products in a week. It has to wait, and you have to wait. And our company is aiming to be there in 30, 40, 50 years in time. So that's why we choose, like Tommy said, we don't want to go with ventures. It's too dangerous for us. We're happy to share equity. We're happy to give equity and to build a long-time relationship with our investors. So thank you as well, Matt, for what you're doing, because it's exactly the thing that we are trying to settle.
Yeah, I would just focus on finding experienced entrepreneurs in your sector, high net worths, who have basically enough money to reinvest or even exit, and just fill your cap table with their cash and knowledge. Probably a waste of time to go other routes indeed.
Yeah,
Of your time and the investors' time.
Yeah, this is what we are aiming for now. So looking as well to talk to big companies who want to invest into sustainable agriculture, and most of these companies are also diversify their economic model onto F&B, luxury hostels and everything, and they want to support these kind of projects too.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have one question here, then I pass the mic.
Hi. Thank you everyone for sharing your experience. So introducing myself, I am Benjamin. I do research, education on global sustainability. And thank you, Matt, for pointing the elephant in the room. What we see is a problem of mindset. And that problem of mindset, as far as we are concerned, is not that people are unwilling to do the right thing, is that they don't have the knowledge. There's an absence of systemic thinking, which is required to deal with the challenges of our times. There is narrow vision. And so basically, it's ignorance and lack of education. And me being in the field of education, I'm wondering where are the investments? And I think there is kind of a vicious cycle, because as people are not educated, they don't really see it's a problem of mindset, and the problem of mindset stems from a problem of ignorance. Therefore, there is no investment in education. How do we bring more education, and how also do we bring more funds in education so that the mindset problem underlying the sustainability crisis can be addressed?
I mean, for in Europe, I know there are lots of discussions going on. That's a job basically for the government, right? For the policies to reshape education. Because in the Netherlands, for example, we're now learning German and French and English, but no education on sustainability or personal finances or the internet or whatever. So the whole of Europe, for what I can say, we really need to modernize our education, and that's a big task. But I don't know if this has to come from private investors.
I mean, a subset of that, I guess, is, I mean, the problem, if I was going to like boil this down, this might be controversial, but the problem is greed, right? The problem is that we want things fast, we want a lot of it, and we want it in expense of what we might get in the future. So the educational piece for me is how we educate people that future value is more important than near-term value, because ultimately that will all balance out massively, right? So how do you educate people not to be greedy? It's tricky. We all, maybe not all, but a lot of us have pensions, a lot of us have investments. You want to make sure those investments do well for this, for the benefit of your children and all the rest of it. Are we ourselves happy to stand up and say, I'm okay with taking a 3% return, another 13% or 20% return? Like, I guess start with yourself. and look at your own portfolios and look at the way in which you spend and manage money. And that would be helpful. There's some great initiatives out there, which, there's some, and I'm happy to connect people with some great resources which look at kind of where you can put money that is good, who is performing well in terms of sort of ESG investments. So I think fundamentally greed is the challenge. How do we tackle that? I think that requires some real leadership, and unfortunately, the leadership we've had in at least the finance space has not really shown us that there is any other way to do this. So yeah, I mean, if you're out there and you are a big investor, and I think the present company accepted, right? I mean, obviously, you're the very fact that you're doing the work you're doing with seed stage, early stage businesses is exactly what's required. How do we get the big institutional funds to start thinking about long-term value? We have seen big shifts. Big pension funds, the Norwegian pension fund, divested from Palmo not that long ago. They've made very big strides to sort of think about their long-term impact, but they're still like outliers.
We have the same thing. It's like Shell, who now publicly announced that they will actually start divesting the sustainable energy business again because it's not profitable enough in the near term. So they're actually pivoting back to just an oil company and probably will die at some point because they innovated too late. But so yeah, that's where we are.
I just think that all education goes a long way, and I think, as is always the case in life, there will be some people who you will just never convince. But I am kind of half glass half full. I think there's enough people. There's enough people who care, and I think the younger generation coming up as well, I think the higher proportions in each generation care, and so I'm optimistic. But I also believe it's important to go to the establishment as well. And one of the initiatives I'm getting involved in is
education. So my background is almost like math. So I work a lot in nonprofit and research. And so I built this because of my big passion since, women's health and climate change, because women are the forefront of fighting of climate change, yet we are the most marginalized, individuals also. And I talk with, lots of investors and predominantly male, which don't understand about this. And I really, really agree with what you said of like, the broken system of like investments of like, let's say, making the valuations of the company just based on economics, like what's your discounted cash flow, blah blah blah, but not valuing the positive externalities that the company make into that. So I really want to see more of like alternative valuation method was also like accounted to the positive externalities that the company make and also discounted the negative externalities that the company make to the real valuations. And I've been struggling with that because like a lot of like impact investors in Asia who's just brand themselves as impact or impact VC, but still really focus like, return and etc. And I agree with what you said, that people can be greedy and of like wants to make sure the sustainability of their own firm in the future. So my questions would be two. Maybe I'm just curious. The first one, in the like realm of climate crisis right now, what are like the healthy returns that the investors in every stage needs to expect? Because let's say, I don't know, like double digit or triple digit is not sustainable anymore. That's first. And the second, I don't know if you know any like how do we build ecosystem where I agree with you, we need to educate more of investors. So not just business accelerators, but also investor accelerators so that they understand and work together with the entrepreneurs, not like they were thinking that they're the boss. And if there's any investor accelerators for them to learn about this. So that's my question. Thank you.
Is that for me to start with?
For all.
I guess I'd also add something else to what you said, which I think sounds like a great business. sustainability is often considered to be, things that grow in the ground or in the trees, nature and wildlife, but we don't often talk about the sustainability of people and social aspects to that, and I think it's really important. And as the father of 3 daughters, that particular business is obviously super close to my heart. So a question about returns. I'm probably the worst person to ask on this panel, but I'm going to start answering. I mean, when we engage with businesses, we're really looking for very low returns, between single-digit returns. But I think more important than the actual number is how long our engagement is, if you like. So we actively expect engagement to be more than 5, 6, 7 years. Investors do exist. I mean, I think that we haven't really said this enough, but there are really, really good, interesting, impact-focused investors out there. They do exist. So, like after this, maybe we can help. It's outside of my scope, unfortunately, but there are people I know that you may not have spoken to yet who might be interesting to chat to.
Also, just consistent markets. I might believe that strawberries are this today. When my strawberries come to market, all of a sudden the price has dropped. So consistent markets for food is another big issue. So if you want to focus on food, look at supply chain, look at consistent market, look at exports, okay? And get to as close to the supply as you can. On the energy front, the issue is they know they have to do energy transition. We did a lot of work to get the government to commit to being climate neutral by 2060, principally on the back of energy transition. The issue is simply this: PLN's a shit show. And it's not entirely their fault. I mean, they're a monopoly, but here's what happened. During the pandemic, they have a lot of subsidies, by the way. There's a lot of hospitals, a lot of people pay almost nothing for energy. But on the back of the pandemic, they had this big, in the commercial market, I won't get into too much detail, unlike most other markets where the commercial market gets really good pricing and consumers end up paying the bulk of what it takes from an energy company. In Indonesia, it's reversed. So what ended up happening when all these companies shut, all the profitable energy went down, all the energy that cost them a lot of money and subsidy energy went way up, and they found themselves kind of upside down. And then they ended up with too much energy in certain places that they can't do anything with, so they have to ground it to get it off the grid. At the same time, what they recognize is this energy transition issue. It isn't just about going from producing, from shutting down coal-fired power plants and spinning up renewables. They have to solve the coal problem. Indonesia is one of the biggest producers of coal in the world. And so you can't, and a major employer. So you can't solve one problem without solving the other problem, okay? And then the other issue is their grid is not fit for purpose for renewables. That's why in the solar space, the problem they've had is they can't manage solar, and they don't know much about it. So as an example, for a while there, they said, okay, you can have solar, but it can only be 15% of your use. Well, that's a non-starter. You can't, that doesn't even work. Now they go, okay, you can have all the solar you want, but you're either off-grid or you're on-grid, period. Well, that's too expensive because now I'm talking about batteries. And there are models that are out there, but the issue is they need major capacity building to both transition the grid and bring people up to speed so they can manage it. Got another friend who's replacing gen sets on remote islands that with battery and solar. And the problem he's having is he keeps getting called back because PLN, when something breaks, even though they've trained them, can't replace it. So the bottom line is they know they have to get there. Bali is an interesting story because they want Bali to be the first fully sustainable island. Bali'd like to cut the cord, but they haven't gone far enough to have renewable projects around Bali. So again, talking to the governor, working with the governor on big energy projects. There's a solar project going in, but big energy projects, that's a really interesting thing, I think, for entrepreneurs, especially with a little bit of scale. And so, from my perspective, I think there is tremendous opportunity in Indonesia. The issue is that you've really got to zero in on it. And I think the last one I'll comment on is water. Everybody thinks, and man, I'd love for you to comment on this because I know you know a lot about it. Everybody thinks that we have all the water in the world. The reality is we got real problems with water in Indonesia. We've got a major problem in Bali because we're taking out so much groundwater along the coast here that eventually it's going to be salinated, and then we're going to have other projects. And like anywhere in the world, water's already more expensive than petrol, right? and it's only going to get worse. Wars are going to be over water. So I think anything you can do with water is really, really interesting as well. So.
Thank you. Want to comment on the water before we go to the last question of the day?
I feel like there's a lot to comment on the water. Yeah, I mean, look, it's to me it brings to mind this a three-pillar research thing I was doing for many years called the water, energy, food nexus. Water, energy, and food are fundamentally the three transitions we need to look at, and that applies on a local scale, it applies on a global scale, and applies on a national scale. Bali is screwed on all of those levels right now. So if we think about that through that lens, that's a really kind of neat way of, because it interacts, right? But we absolutely need to kind of consider water. The great thing about water is that people are prepared to pay for it. I mean, as you've seen, if you come from anywhere in most parts of the world where you get water for free, pretty much for free out of a tap, you come here and you're buying aqua bottles and aqua gallons and, or buying filtration systems. The investment, I don't know if you've ever done the numbers on how much you spend a year on water as a boule in Bali. It's not insignificant, right? So there's already a high willingness to pay. So anyway, way too much to go into on that. but Luke knows where the bodies are buried really with some of these conversations. So I'd recommend following up with him, but absolutely agree on the waterfront for sure. Maybe I can't remember who the last question was.
Thank you. We have the last question coming up there.
Yes, so many amazing things I would love to comment and ask about. Just one thing, I work with public funders and policymakers in the mobility space, and I heard a few people comment about, if policymakers would just do this. Just one thought I would like to leave here too. Policymakers in a lot of countries are driven by voters, so you're not just a consumer, you're a voter and a citizen. Please remember that. And the second comment on behavior change, at least in the mobility space, the research that I'm seeing is you don't tell stories. You build the thing and people will come and then they change their attitude. And I think Gojek is the best example. Now my question to at least two mobility experts is, I love what Gojek is doing in Indonesia. I work with the Europeans and I would love for us to have a Gojek. There are a lot of reasons why we don't, but can you see anything we can do to not just export our knowledge to Indonesia, but actually see the sharing economy that Indonesia is doing so well, the digital economy, to export that to the rich countries? Thank you.
No, I think that as a business, you always think, is there some intellectual property here that could go beyond our borders? And I think, Gojek has certainly solved a lot of problems in terms of supply and demand. There's a lot of technology, a lot of machine learning and AI goes into magically having drivers available when you need them. And it is a platform. No mistake, this is absolutely a platform. It's somewhat very specific to the Indonesian market, but I think if you think globally as a company, they have expanded already. To Vietnam, to Singapore. So there is this idea of exporting the platform to other countries, and it works best in countries where they are two-wheel economies. Those are the countries where this would work the best. Other countries, it's a little bit more challenging. So you have to think about product market fit as well, particularly. But they're certainly, and you also don't want to chew off more than you can handle, like Uber did. And Uber tried to be everywhere all at once and just couldn't handle that scale. So try to do a good job in as many countries as you feel you can do a good job in.
But Europe has a great public transport system. I mean, it's superb. So I don't see this exporting, and it should be used more. Actually, I would hate to Gojek to come into Europe, to be honest. For the traffic, the pollution, works great to European cities now, to be honest.
Do a good job in as many countries as you feel you can do a good job in.
But Europe has a great public transport system. I mean, it's superb. So I don't see this exporting, and it should be used more. Actually, I would hate to Gojek to come into Europe, to be honest. For the traffic, the pollution, works great to European cities now, to be honest.
Okay.
I'll do that privately.
Yeah, we have our networking session. We're a little bit late for that already, right?
Can I just make one quick comment on something that the lady here who's working in women's health, really important. Talent is absolutely equally spread. But you can look at many companies today, and they'll say our our female representation is great. But you have to look at the leaders and the leadership levels, and often it's not great. And I've been in companies where you're standing up on stage and it's all white guys. So when you're investing, and I'm just speaking against myself here a little bit, but when you're investing, look for companies who actually take diversity, equity, and inclusion seriously. Because those are the companies who really are promoting the smartest people. If you are promoting and hiring the smartest people, you end up with a mixture, much more diverse mixture on your leadership level and at all levels. And if that's not the case, it's kind of a red flag. And there's some history there, and there's been some catching up. But I don't think there's any excuse anymore. And I find myself in this old situation of being white guys. But I absolutely made a point of promoting and hiring, and just hiring the best people and promoting the best people, and it changed quite quickly. But I'm kind of out of there now to try and give people, the younger generation, an opportunity. So yeah, no, I think wherever you go, I think whether it's this audience or any audience, if you don't see enough diversity, you probably have to work on that.
Absolutely. We have to work on our panel for the next Scale Climate Action. We've been working hard on that. Anyway, huge round of applause for our panelists. Big thank you to you guys for dedicating this time to speak to us here today, to prepare your presentations, to prepare for everything. Cannot be more thankful than I am now. So right now, if you guys want to mingle with them, have a chat before everybody goes off for lunch, please do.